So first off, let's start off with the most important thing, the age, because the age of the pinball machine makes the biggest difference, because as you can already imagine, the older the pinball machines are, the older the technology will be. And of course, like every other thing on this planet, pinball machines as well evolved over the time. I mean, the first pinball machines existed in, I think, 1920 or 1930, something like this, but those weren't really pinball machines as you see those things here standing behind me. I mean, the first pinball machines, they have been just a wooden board with some pins or nails, and you just rolled a ball down there, and wherever the ball landed, those were the points that you get. So I think you also call those kind of machines pachinko or something like this. So I think that's a little bit what the first pinball machines have been. But then I think, I don't really exactly know which year it was, if it was somewhere in the 40s or 50s or something like this. That's when the first real pinball machines have been made, which means those are pinball machines who have the flippers. And from that point on, pinball changed from a game of luck into a game of skill, because that's something that people still don't understand. Many people still think, oh, pinball is just a game of luck, because I can't control where the ball is rolling. All I can do is, when the ball comes down, I just push the flippers and I hope the flipper kicks the ball back into the game, but I can't really control the ball. How can I control what the ball is doing? But the thing is, pinball is a game of skill. And the younger the pinball machine gets, the more skill you need in order to really win the game. So on traditional modern pinball machines, such as those ones, they always say it's 70% skill and 30% luck. So yeah, that's the way it is. So yeah, so you have those old pinball machines, and the first pinball machines were called EM pinball machines. EM basically stands for early mechanic. Yeah, not electromechanic, early mechanic. So this means those pinball machines were controlled by hardware, which means you only have relays, switches, contacts, anything like this. But you know, those were really basically basic games, really simple games, where you just had to hit a few targets, maybe in the right order or something like this, and those were the points that you collected. And you also had those scoring wheels, and yeah, but those are really boring games. I mean, those games, they are really nice because they have a really nice nostalgic look and feel to it. Kind of like, I don't know, those old games, they remind me a little bit more of really old jukeboxes or something like this. So yeah, but the game has been a lot slower because the playfield hasn't been, how do you say, tilted or so. So the playfield was really very flat and the ball was moving very slow. And at this point, I think you also didn't have anything like sounds or music or speech or anything like this. You basically just had the motors going, and you had whistles or bells or something like this, but that's about it. But as time went on, technology evolved, and then there were those SS pinball machines. And in this case, SS stands for solid state pinball machines. Those were pinball machines, I think the first solid state pinball machines appeared somewhere in the late 70s, early 80s or something like this. I don't really know that, but anyway, around this age. So this means solid state pinball machines. That means that those machines were operated by by software instead of hardware, sorry. And yeah, this means you have in the back box right here, you have circuit boards that control what happens on the playfield. So if you hit that or if you do this, something happens. And so those are the first pinball machines where you also had things like speech, music, sound effects, stuff like this. But how can you see what machine is early mechanic and what machine is solid state if you're buying like one of those older machines? So you can basically see it on the scoring displays, because the early mechanics, they had those scoring wheels, but the solid state pinball machines, they had digital displays, you know, like alphanumerical displays. So those machines are solid state. And yeah, as time went on, those machines also got a little bit more complicated, and you had a lot more features, you know, not only music, but you also had stuff like multi-ball. You had magnets under the playfield that controlled the ball or stopped the ball at certain points. You had way more games, you know, the first ramps have been created, and you had double level playfields and stuff like this. And yeah, those machines were really good compared to the other ones. But some of those really old early solid state pinball machines, they also still had this nostalgic look and nostalgic feel to it, because they looked like early mechanics, but they were solid state. And yeah, you can still find some pretty old school looking solid state pinball machines out there. And yeah, then time goes on, and then they started to put missions in those games. So instead of just hitting some targets to collect points, you suddenly had certain missions to complete. You know, like changing a stoplight from green to red and just chase from the police or something like this. You know, like in the game High Speed, which many people say is like the first real game that introduced, you know, missions and stuff like this, but of course it really wasn't. I mean, there have been other games before who tried something similar already. Yeah, but you had missions to complete, and as time goes on, the games got more and more complicated. There were more and more features and games added, and of course one day they said, okay, we need to add another big feature, you know, and this feature has been DMD. This stands for dot matrix displays. So they replaced the alphanumerical digital displays with dot matrix displays, which means now the displays weren't only able to show and create numbers and letters and signs, but now they could also show animations. And of course, when you have a game which is based on a movie or something like this, you were able to put, you know, those animations, some scenes from the movie into the game. And this made the games really, really good and really popular. I think dot matrix pinball machines, they are still the most popular pinball machines ever, because they are just amazing. And yeah, there were different dot matrix displays. You know, those two machines that I have standing right here, they have basically the same kind of display or the same size, but there have also been machines like I think Hook was one of those pinball machines who had a really small and really thin dot matrix display, but there were also machines like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, who have real big dot matrix displays, and they of course look really, really amazing, really. And yeah, of course the machines got more complicated. There were more and more missions. They were focusing more on movies and TV shows instead of just, you know, imaginary themes that they just made up for pinball machines. And they were called licensed pinball machines because they were based on a certain license or a certain theme. But then at the end of the 90s, the pinball business was struggling because nobody was buying those many pinball machines anymore, and they tried to invent yet another thing. So first we had early mechanics with the scoring wheels, then we had solid states with alphanumerical digital displays, then we had solid states with dot matrix displays. So what would the next step be? Of course, a TV monitor. So you had those Pinball 2000 pinball machines, which have been basically just two different models or two different games. The first game that has been released was Revenge from Mars, which is a sequel to another pinball machine called Attack from Mars. So Revenge from Mars was the sequel, and they had a monitor in the back box that was kind of like shining on the play field, and the back of the glass was reflecting in the back, so it was kind of like a little mirror, but you could still see through a little bit. And this gave them the ability to put animations on the play field, because they already had other games like Baby Pac-Man or something like this, which has been a mix between a Pac-Man game and a pinball game, but it sucked. It just didn't work. But with Pinball 2000 you have animations and videos on the play field, and you were still playing your game. So it looks like you're shooting at a saucer or something like this, and the saucer explodes on the play field, or it looks like you're shooting at some aliens and stuff like this that are standing directly on the play field, on the ramps and stuff like this. It's really cool. And the second one has been Star Wars Episode 1. So those are the only Pinball 2000 games. So now you have seen what are the differences between the pinball machines when it comes to ages. So in my next video I'm going to be talking about some special pinball machines that are special or collector favorites for some reasons. So you know which machines are really expensive. I'm going to tell you which pinball machine, if you have the money, which pinball machine is the most expensive pinball machine that you can get, and yeah, what you have to watch out when you get a pinball machine. So see you in part 2. Bye.